Welcome, friends. Think for a moment. Many of us have had someone that we look up to in our personal lives or career. They've had such an impact on us that we say to ourselves, I wish I could be just like them. What do I have to do? What a blessing they bring to our lives. For me, I had a senior pastor at my first appointment in Harrisonburg, Virginia, 1990 to 1992. I observed him in ministry, his preaching, his pastoral care, his administration, his love of the church. His words and actions set me up to be the pastor I am today, full of flaws, but a love of God, Jesus, and people, especially the people of Doolin Church. What a wonderful blessing this person, Don, brought to my life. My tenure here at Doolin disciples have been a blessing on my life and ministry. You have blessed me during the death of my parents, during building renovations, sickness and hospitalizations, COVID, and all of my mistakes. What a blessing you have been to me. And I pray that I have been a blessing to you as we reach out to others to transform lives. Today, we're going to look at the relationship between the prophets Elijah and Elisha, and how Elijah shared a double blessing with Elisha. The scripture begins, Now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way to Gilgal. Elijah is a prophet of the Lord, and Elisha is his apprentice, his follower. He was like a son, and he wants to be so much like Elijah. Elijah and Elisha are walking together. Being a prophet, Elijah travels from town to town proclaiming his message of the Lord. They start at Gilgal, getting ready to travel to Bethel. And Elijah says to Elisha, the Lord wants me to travel further. You just stay here, and I'll continue on. And Elisha responds, As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. In other words, Elijah, you're stuck with me. So they travel together to Bethel. Elijah next decides that he needs to travel to Jordan. And he says to Elisha, I'm going to be traveling to Jordan. You can just stay here. It's all going to be good. And Elisha says, As the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. And so they travel to Jordan. On the way to the Jordan, they come to a river. And we're told that Elijah folds his mantle and strikes the water. And a mantle would have been a clothing that a person would have worn that signified their status in life. It was usually very colorful. And so Elijah, as the prophet, had this mantle. And he folds it up and he strikes the water, and the water parts and they pass through the river. Elijah is thinking, wow, this is really cool. I want to be just like Elijah and be able to do that. Elijah now has a sense of the loyalty that Elisha has for him, his trustworthiness. He sees something in Elisha, and he says to him, Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken away. And Elisha says, Let me inherit a double blessing of your spirit. So Elisha is not asking not only for a blessing, but a double blessing, 1.5 for his share. He pledges to follow Elijah as a disciple, helper, and son, where he can gain experience, and now he would like his teacher's blessing. Elisha does not seek fame. He does not say riches, but rather wisdom, faithfulness, the power of a prophet to speak to the people for the Lord. So Elijah tells Elisha that if Elisha sees him being taken away, Elisha will receive his blessing. But if Elisha does not see Elijah taken away, he will not. And then all of a sudden, a chariot of fire and horses separate Elijah and Elisha. And Elijah is taken up into heaven. And he throws down the mantle to Elisha. And Elijah picks up the mantle and he folds it. And he must think, what's going to happen? Will I be like Elijah if I hit this ground and the water will part and I can cross? And so Elijah takes it, and as he strikes the ground, he says, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And the water parts, and Elijah crosses. Elisha is now the prophet of the Lord, taking the place of Elijah. Elisha, he's known as a prophet for helping the poor. He's a prophet among the people, showing compassion and helping people overcome difficulties in their life. Except for one thing. He didn't like being made fun of that he was bald. And I'm not going to tell you that story. It's really not appropriate. So you go to 2 Kings, the 2nd chapter, and you can see what happens when a group of young men come and make fun of Elijah, and they say, "Go away, bald head, go away, bald head." And see what Elisha has to say for them. But we're talking about blessings. And it was Elisha that helped make this connection between God and the people of sharing God's blessings. We, as Julian disciples and friends, are called to share the blessings that God has given us with others. A few weeks ago, we had Alan Chin speak about Free Minds Book Club and how we have been a blessing to Free Minds Book Club and received a letter from them this week. We also have been a blessing to a group called L'Arche. And we received a letter from them. I'll just share with it briefly. It says, "Dear Pastor Dave and Doolin Church, thank you for your contribution to L'Arche of Greater Washington, D.C. What was once a single row house in the Adams Morgan neighborhood has grown to include 4 houses in the greater D.C. area. Your support helps L'Arche build communities of belonging, provide quality professional services, and ultimately change society to be more welcoming of people of all abilities. We are grateful for your generosity." And friends, to visit a home of L'Arche is one of the most popular activities and ministries of our youth group. We have 9 Doolin disciples who left this morning for Charleston, West Virginia, where they will share blessings to transform people's lives. And this morning, I'd like to give Homestretch an opportunity to speak to us about how sharing our blessings has changed and transformed people's lives. So we have 2 to help us with that. First is Christopher Fay. He is the executive director. So Chris, come on up. You don't have to wear your mask as you speak. And then after he speaks, he's going to introduce Amanda for us. So Chris, we're glad that you're here, and come on in up here, it'd be great. And let's see what Chris has to say for us today.
Good morning. So I'm a bald man. But try and imagine me as being a family with children, especially a mother with young children. And then double that and triple that until you get to about 2,000 families with children. That's how many families you have helped us serve since the organization of Homestretch was founded 32 years ago. One of the blessings that I want to share with you, for those of you who may not know it, is that this church was there at the founding, in the very beginning of Homestretch, when it was just an idea that let's reach out and support homeless families. You have been there from the start. I can't think of many organizations that fit into that category. So you're very special to us. I want to share a couple of stories that happened just recently to give you a sense of your impact. Just on Friday morning, I learned that a young woman named Amal, who had come to us as a victim of domestic violence, just earned her certification as a licensed pharmacist. So she went from homelessness to a pharmacist. I also, on Thursday, the day before that, I learned that one of the women in our program now, currently, has done so well that she has purchased her own home. So she's actually exiting our program by moving into a house that she has purchased. She was able to do that because in roughly 2 and 3rd years, she was able to find a career path in Homestretch, complete a certification, which happened to be in an IT field, and build up so much savings that she could have a down payment on a home. Now, these are unusual. Not everyone who comes to Homestretch becomes a homeowner or a licensed pharmacist. But the thing is, through your help and support, that opportunity is there for everyone. In May, we had an opportunity to put on to present a number of our stories for our donors, and some of you may have been there. Some of the women that got up and spoke about their experience included a woman who came to us also as a victim of terrible violence in the home, who in November was recognized as one of the top nurses in Metro DC by Washingtonian Magazine. And in April, one of our graduates, also a victim of domestic violence, appeared on the Discovery Network and the Food Network on one of the top chef shows because of her new burgeoning business as in culinary arts. Every one of them, when they came to Homestretch, were women with children who were desperate for a chance to find, how can I change the course of my life? They needed a safe place where they could feel trust and love, and they could start to put those building blocks in place to change the course of their life for good. This is what you do every time that you provide support for us, and you've provided support for us every year for over 30 years. You really are an amazing place. One of the things that we've missed the last 2 years under COVID was the chance for you to see our graduates during our graduation, which is usually in October. And it's a special event because women and men who have come through our program get up and talk about what it meant to be able to recover. And the sense of love that they have for each other is palpable. You feel it. You get a sense that this is a very special place. And we love doing it here because it's one of the rare opportunities for you as a congregation to see the results of your love. I hope we can do that again this fall. It all depends, of course, on COVID. But I look forward to it. I look forward to you seeing and feeling the impact of your love. Now, I do want to point out there's something very special about Homestretch. We're one of the only programs, probably the only program in Northern Virginia, but one of the only programs in the United States designed this way, where we can take a family with children, put them in a home, and keep them for long enough and provide the depth of services that can pretty much address anything that happened to them. So that's including employment, scholarships to go to school, a whole program to help them get out of debt, build their savings, repair their credit. We have our own licensed preschool. We have our own nursery. We have our own child services staff. We have our own housing location service to help them understand how real estate works. And we have a lot of corporate supporters that help make that happen. For instance, this young woman who just purchased a home, she did it with United Bank, which happens to be our primary bank. They said, can we provide that mortgage for her? It really takes a lot of people to change the life of one family that is in terrible, terrible crisis. But every one of these families has children. The average age of someone in Homestretch is only 9. 9 years old. Imagine that. It's not what we think of usually when we think of homelessness, is it? But 2 out of 3 people that come to us as a child. Anyway, the most important message I have on behalf of all the staff and the board and all the families of Homestretch is thank you. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for loving these families who are desperate for a chance to rebuild their lives. Thank you for being a caring congregation. You put into action the words of Christ when he says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You treat the families in Homestretch not as pariahs, but as brothers and sisters and children of your own. You love them the way you would want to be loved. That is the service that Christ asked of us, and that is what you do. So thank you. Now I'm going to invite up Amanda, one of our graduates who spoke at the May event. If you were there, you would have heard her, to tell a little bit of her story.
So please, as Amanda comes up, let's show our love to Chris and for the ministry that he does.
Good morning. My name's Amanda, and I'm a graduate of Homestretch. And I was telling Chris, well, before I go there, I won't tell you much about my story, but I was one of those mothers with 2 children, homeless as I fled my abuser, very broken, very lost. And I told Chris this morning on my way in, one of my first memories of Homestretch, I was new about a month into the program, and I sat right here at Doolin to come for the graduation. And I really didn't know what to expect. I had spent 4 months in a shelter with my kids, had just reunited with my daughter, who I hadn't seen for a year. So there was a lot going on coming at us. And, being in a shelter is hard. Living in this one tiny bedroom, I was grateful for it, but you don't have a lot of hope and motivation to get up every day. You don't know what's next. You don't know when they're going to tell you it's time to go. And when I came to Homestretch, I didn't know what to expect, but I had a little bit of hope in me. And then when I sat here in the church and we got to listen to all these graduates speak, and I got to listen to Pastor Dave, and I know some of your congregation members were there, and I think that was really what opened up hope for me, because now I knew I had 2 years, I had a safe home, I had a lot of work to do. I was broken. My children were broken. But your church, your congregation, people who didn't know any of us, and I'm hearing all these success stories, and I'm realizing that I'm sitting in a place that has contributed to many of these people's lives, and I looked forward to now I got to be one of those people. So in those 2 years that go by very fast, because even now, as my life is in a much better place, I can say 2 years is the blink of an eye. My son graduated last year, my daughter will graduate high school next year, and I just think, oh my gosh, the time is flying by. But in those 2 years of having a safe home, I had to go through actually 3 years of trials with my abuser. So my entire time in Homestretch, I was in court with this man. I had to find a job. I had to get my kids into school. I had to get us into therapy because, like I said, we were all very broken and shattered. I had to figure out my debt and my credit situation. And then there's this church that I get to come to every year, and I know there were other events throughout the year besides graduation where we got to join your congregation. But I got to come to this church and just see people who knew nothing about me, nothing about the other hundreds of families that were in there with me, and you guys all opened your hearts up to us, gave us a chance, and really that, for someone like me, for someone coming from a homeless shelter, who's fled domestic violence, whose society kind of looks at us and says, well, why didn't you leave before this? And this is why I didn't leave, because when I did finally leave, I was homeless. So you give us this chance, and we can take, the love from you, and I know that everybody, Amal was in the shelter with me, so I was really happy when Chris shared that story. And I hear so many stories of these women who have become my friend and my support and my circle, and it's because you all, who are strangers, but you're not strangers because we all come from one, you open your hearts and your supports and your services to us. And so for me, my children who were 6 and 8 and are now 16 and 18 have learned so much about giving and about blessings. And we now are in a place where we can bless others. So thank you for letting me speak to you this morning, and thank you for letting me share my story. But most importantly, just thank you for everything you do for Homestretch that affects me and thousands of other me's.
Absolutely. Show the love. Great. Thank you so much.